Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Unit 6 hearings. We look forward to having a great discussion with you today. My name is Tom Vance. I am a professor of education at Kansas State University, and I've been kicking around in the We the People program for nearly 30 years. So hopefully you find something better to do with your life than what I have, but it's been fun, and we really look forward to the discussion this morning. My colleagues are.
Hey everybody, Sean Arthur's former high school history teacher and lawyer, currently do some global training. And I must say I'm disappointed that I missed the memo on the plain background and the black jacket, but that you all look sharp as you all got those memos.
My name is Luana Davis. I am a law professor in Birmingham, Alabama at Cumberland School of Law.
And would you please introduce yourselves to us?
Good afternoon. We are juniors from Unit 6, representing Wauwatosa West as the Wisconsin State Champions. My name is Jude Whale.
I'm Zoe Del Vecchio.
I'm Donovan McGann.
I'm Emily Lenahan.
And I'm Ella Archambault.
We're here on behalf of our teaching assistants, mentors, and teacher, Mr. Chad Mateski.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for bringing your students to the national finals, and we look forward to a great conversation. And we have a few questions that will frame that conversation. And they are, Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time? And how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What are the most pressing domestic or global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin whenever you're ready.
Faced with the challenges of an endless universe, man will be forced to mature further, just as the Neanderthals, faced with an entire planet, had no choice but to go away from a tradition of savagery. This quote from author Dean Koontz embodies change in human condition over time. As each generation develops, human condition is generally uplifted. Thanks to advancement in agriculture, humans are no longer required to eat tree bark, a food which once required bacteria that grew in the human appendix. Human condition has advanced so greatly that once necessary organs are no longer required.
Said changes in the human condition can lead to demand for either more government or less government. The New Deal called for more action from the government to aid ending the Great Depression when human condition was poor. Alternatively, the colonists wanted less government action when taxed without representation. The British government's response did not adequately address these demands, increasing pressure for American independence.
Changes in the human condition also shift expectations of government policy, altering the prioritization of natural rights versus classical republicanism. John Locke defined natural rights as fundamental rights independent from laws or customs. Its counterpart, classical republicanism, involves setting aside individual desires for the benefit of the common good.
In a strong functioning government, these approaches coexist. In the age of enlightenment, scientific advancement, philosophy, and a widely translated copy of the Bible shifted expectations of policy as the need for natural rights was heightened.
The global pandemic requires policies guided by classical republicanism as the health and safety of citizens are at risk. Expectations of government generally tend to follow a more classical republican approach in times of crisis, although some see this as a threat to their natural rights.
Domestically, political polarization has been steadily increasing. Pew Research Center found that 87% of Republicans supported former President Donald Trump, whereas only 6% of Democrats supported him. This marks the largest divide ever recorded, augmented by disinformation campaigns and echo chambers. Moving forward, including civic education programs like We the People in curriculums could decrease this divide, as a study by Georgetown professor Diana Owens revealed that alumni are better informed and participate at higher rates when voting.
Wealth disparity is increasing dramatically. According to the Haas Institute, the 95th percentile of income increased from 3 times to nearly 5 times that of the 40th percentile household from 1970 to 2012. Reducing this inequality would improve the human condition of the middle class and the 38 million citizens living in poverty. Meanwhile, it would benefit the common good by increasing economic growth nationwide. Policy solutions include expanding the earned income tax, raising the minimum wage, and increasing investment in public education.
Globally, we must guard against cyber attacks as warfare is becoming more accessible from remote distances. In 2020, the U.S. Federal Information Technology System, SolarWinds, was breached. A policy that strengthens security while improving our foreign relations would be effective in limiting the probability of attacks.
Climate change must be addressed promptly, as NASA determines there are merely 9 years until damage becomes irreversible, and the human condition is severely threatened. Regulations on corporate climate emission would fund government climate action through funds upon exceeding the limits, while incentivizing a reduction in carbon pollution.
John Adams captured the complexity of approaches to government when he stated, "For forms of government let fools contest, that which is best administered is best. The best approach to governing depends on the circumstances. History has proven that government must continue to be flexible with the ever-changing condition of humankind in order to best respond to evolving expectations." Thank you. This concludes our statement. We are now ready for your follow-up questions.
Thanks, y'all. Let's jump right in. So Aaron Rodgers leads the pack to the big win over the Bears this fall. Massive super spreader event, however. So the governor of Wisconsin comes out and says, you must, anytime you leave the house, you must wear a mask. Every single person must wear a mask anytime they leave the house. How would proponents of natural rights theory and proponents of classical republicanism philosophy look at this mask mandate differently? And then do you have any take on whether you would support that mandate?
We can see that with COVID, especially being a detrimental problem in America today, we have 31.9 million cases so far right now. And with classical republicanism being a major idea in the sense of common good and public safety, we should take those measures instead of natural rights, whereas we should mandate and force people to wear masks instead of have the choice to.
It's a very classical republicanism response, and we can see this because we are forcing people to go against their natural rights. And while I personally believe that this is a violation of people's natural rights, for the greater good of the country, it's what's necessary. And we can also see this with the vaccine. 2 days ago, the White House tweeted out that they planned on distributing 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days, but they have now successfully done 200 million vaccines in the first 58 days of President Biden being in office.
Natural rights proponents would take issue to this, seeing as it begs the question, how far can government action go if they're restricting your ability to go without a mask? We can see this extended to businesses being closed and some businesses being deemed essential while others not. And this is an issue for families workers trying to provide for their families. And we saw several cases taken to courts in order to determine whether or not they were essential or not.
In times of crisis, such as a global pandemic, the government tends to lean more towards classical Republican approaches, but we can see issues with this arising in history, such as with the rise of Nazi Germany.
You guys probably have read the summary of what happened at the Constitutional Convention and the disagreements among the framers that constitutional republicanism would only work in small homogeneous societies, of which the United States has never been, and now much less so than ever have we been that. Are we too diverse for the common good to even determine what the common good is?
Not necessarily. Classical Republican approaches tend to work extremely well, like you said, in small homogeneous communities. So this works well on a state level, whereas on a federal level, overarching policies of natural rights can guide policy, which also can have underlying, natural rights can underlie ideas of classical republicanism.
Yes, we are too diverse for it to work. We can see this because as a nation, we are more similar to Venezuela than we are to the Netherlands. And this example being that socialism failed in Venezuela, but works in the Netherlands because there's much more diversity in Venezuela than there is in the Netherlands, similar to the United States, which is known as the melting pot of the world.
We can also see this disagreement arising over the past summer with BLM protesters calling for police reform and equality, while other half of the nation is in disagreement as to whether this is even an issue. And in a more homogeneous society, perhaps we wouldn't have such wide disagreement.
As stated in the Declaration of Independence, it says that all men are created equal. Therefore, allowing our cities and our nation to be as diverse as we can. Therefore, we can lead our process of classical republicanism for the common good seen in the Declaration of Independence.
I want to explore a little bit further one of the problems that you mentioned in your opening remarks, and that's the problem of political polarization. Can you think of any institutional reforms, any governmental reforms that might help to address political polarization? And by the way, since you're willing to talk about all levels of government, any level of government would work for your response.
Instituting a parliamentary system on the federal level could help the government able respond better to different political parties, leading to less tension. We can see this in European countries where there's less divide in parliaments.
To do this, we would also have to repeal the single member district mandate, but my plan would be to undergo a removal of Instagram and TikTok and Facebook's market or ideas that they use where you click on certain links and it shows you to the same sort of minded links that you were clicked on to keep you on the app longer. And this shows nothing of the other side and only continues polarization.
Recently, we have seen TikTok, the social media base, as a major part of political polarization, showing multiple sides of conservative and multiple sides of liberals. As Trump wanted to ban TikTok in 2016, he tried to change the political polarization within that social media base in order to decrease political tensions in the parties.
A multi-party system and proportional representation, such as is seen in parliamentary systems, could also be beneficial, so that the two major political parties, Republicans and Democrats, wouldn't be so head-on and confrontational, and we could instead work within our smaller factions.
On the second part of your question, going into a smaller government action, we could see that mandating classes such as We the People that we are in right now might help increase decrease polarization. As Diane Owens, professor, did a study that said We the People alumni are much more involved in society. We could see that this would be a big success in balancing out the equation.
Let me follow up on the Diana Owens reference and civic education. So the United States, the immigration test, the USCIS test should be required for all Wisconsin students to graduate high school. You must be able to pass that test. Agree or disagree?
Agree. If all citizens are able to vote, then they have to be able to understand the power that this holds. As said in Federalist 49, the people are the fount of all authority. And if the people are uneducated, then we cannot trust them with the authority.
Societies like our democratic republic also largely rely on virtuous citizens. And I think that these tests should be strengthened and more difficult, as only 39% of American citizens know what the three branches of government are.
Disagree. We see that education is still a system which there is great gaps dependent upon your skin color. African American schoolers are 9 times more likely to have an in-school suspension compared to their white counterparts, and requiring a test that mandates across the state could be a violation of the 14th Amendment equal protection.
Unit 6, thank you so much. Wow, really a fine performance. You know, from the opening questions through the follow-ups, you did such a a wonderful job of navigating, as we force you to do in Unit 6, a wide variety of issues, and yet you were able to marshal in my opinion, the right kinds of evidence, examples, and reasoning that really demonstrated your command over these topics. I just have to point out a few things. We tell students, and we the people, if you know these ideas, then you can make good decisions as a citizen. Well, that's true, but you also pointed out another important piece that isn't necessarily explicitly taught in We the People, and that is context always matters. And I appreciated that so much. I liked also your references to federalism. You know, even though the We the People book is mostly about our national government and so forth, there's a whole bunch of other lawmaking that goes on out there. And you were quick to point that out in some of your responses. And I really appreciated that. I loved your responses, all of your responses to the polarization question. I might have added just, and this is not a knock on you at all, but you went parliament and multi-party and so forth, which was all reasonable and sound. And maybe even getting rid of the electoral college, where a winner take all system. I'll just throw that out as food for thought. And at least years ago at the University of Nebraska, the political science faculty taught us that was one of the reasons why we had a two-party system, was because of the ways in which we elect a president. So terribly impressive job. Really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. Enjoyed it. I also have to say it was the first time today and each of these hearings is unique in many ways. First time today I heard tree bark, employed in sort of the argumentative strategy. And then also the procedure, though, of doing this, which is, I thought that was kind of resourceful, because I know you're in different locations, right? And so knowing how to structure that speech like that was just a good example of flexing in the virtual world. So thank you for sharing that, and bringing in the TikTok. You certainly mentioning social media, and there's a lot more we could have explored if we had the time. Unfortunately, we don't. You've got one more session left on the day, I think. Is that right? So good luck, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. I echo what my fellow judges have said. Good luck to you guys. Excellent presentation, particularly at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And